Hello, hello. Welcome to your Saturn and Pisces transit astrology forecast. You are joining myself, Esoteric Essa, and Vanessa Codorniu, known as the Biz Bruja. We are both astrologers. We're happy to have you here. We're going to get into a lot of depth of this upcoming 2.5-year transit. We are going to get into, just so you know, so you want to stick around, we're going to get into the basics of Saturn, concepts and themes, the basics of Pisces, the Saturn collective influence. People who have Pisces North Node, that's a big one we really wanted to talk about today because we both have Pisces North Nodes. Yeah, we're excited. And then general predictions and advancements and who will it affect the most. So those are the key chapters of our agenda today. I want to kick it over to my sister, my hermana, someone who I love, obviously, and I consider respectfully an elder to me. And when I say elder, I don't mean like because she's old, although there's nothing wrong with ageism and femininity, but she has guided me in so many ways, personally and professionally and spiritually. So I'm so honored we're finally doing this.
Finally. Y'all, we were waiting for, or at least I think my body was waiting for Saturn to go direct for us to do this because it's been in a retrograde, which you'll find out all about it. Yeah. And y'all know that I do astrology, ancestral healing, and I'm a psychic medium. So, and I love you so much. And so I see you as somebody that like soul tribe, and like hermana del alma. So I'm so happy to be, and I can't wait to get into this because like we were talking about this before. I actually like Saturn. Like I actually like Saturn. So
yeah, we are definitely sisters, soul sisters. And agreed, you guys, we're going to get into this, but quick backstory. Vanessa and I tried scheduling this like maybe 2 or 3 times, and we just had to keep rescheduling for, personal reasons, like Vanessa was under the weather and stuff. But I agree, that was during Saturn retrograde. So upon the time of filming this, Saturn has now gone direct, which Saturn went direct on November 4th. Okay, let's get started into Saturn basics. So what about Saturn do you want to tell us for those of us who are newbies here, Vanessa?
So Saturn is one of the outer planets, right? And when we think of the skies and we look at the skies, the planets that we can see with our eye, right, that are closer, personal planets like Mercury and the moon, right, and Venus, they're the ones we look at as affecting our lives personally. That still does not mean that the unseen planets don't have an influence, but they're more the generational planets. And so Saturn is out there, but yet affects a whole generation. And what it does, right? I'm going to get into like what we affect, call it, but Saturn takes about 28 to 29 years to come full circle. So it's going to affect a whole generation of 28 to 29 years. That's why we call it a Saturn return, which we'll get into at some point. And we can expect Saturn, right, to spend some time in each of our houses, each of the 12 houses. And as it goes through, it affects us and invites us into greater responsibility. Saturn is a cold planet. It is seen as the taskmaster, right? It is the one that's like, I'm the Lord of Karma. This is what's happening. I'm going to test you because your ass is going to grow. I also see it as the sacred medicine of limitation, right? And so in the past, they used to see it as a malefic planet, like, no, my God, it's going to come and it's going to hurt me. But as spiritual seekers and people on a path, we can welcome Saturn in by saying, okay, it's a sacred medicine of limitation. I don't just learn from being freewheeling and doing whatever I want. I also learn from difficulty and pain. I also build my character through this and facing my challenges. So for me, right, and for all of us, I think Saturn rules over our earthly human experiences, right? It's what it's, I think to me at the core is like, why did we incarnate? We incarnate to be in a body and to learn what it means to be limited through a body, through a certain time frame, and also through different phases that we go through. And so to me, Saturn is the reality of your soul direction. It is the spaces and the places where you haven't had enough discipline to learn. And it's the one that's going to say to you, well, in order to get what you want, in order to become who you truly are, you're going to have to jump through this hoop. You're going to have to go to the dentist. You're going to have to do your accounting on time. You're going to have to run through these hoops to be all that you truly are. And I also call it this, Jasmine, I also call it the dominatrix, right? Like I do call it that too, because it's like, right? The
Why do I
domination.
like that? Why do I
I know,
like that?
I do, right? I'm like, it's like the whoosh, right? And you're like, oh, it hurts so good. Okay. But if we
Stop
can
it,
look at it,
Saturn daddy. Stop
I
it.
know. And it's like, it's really that daddy who's like, you're gonna like it in the end, right? You're gonna like it in the end. But at the moment that you're going through it, it could feel like at times, especially those Saturn returns, like your life is falling apart. You've got to make different choices, or the things that you were trying to escape and evade are suddenly front and center. And there's no way, to get past it, but to go through it.
Absolutely. Well put. And so for those of us who want to sit with understanding, like what exactly does Saturn represent in astrology for us, what are some key words you would say people can use to identify the energy embodiment of Saturn and how that translates into our lives, right? Like disciplinary, go ahead, let's run off each other.
So mastery, discipline, restriction, boundaries, challenges, mastery again keeps coming back. And it's also like, we can have all these amazing spiritual dreams, or I'm going to build my business, do all these things. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to get healthy, or whatever it is. Saturn's like, what time are you getting up in the morning? What's the plan? So it's planning, precision, it's focus, it is strategy. So those are some of the
Yeah. And just to add to that, I would say definitely Saturn is also, to me, the biggest word is discipline. He's the disciplinary. He is Father Time. He is the Lord of Karma. I do associate Saturn a lot with justice and reform, not abolishment like Aquarius, but reform. And we were talking about that off camera about Saturn just finished leaving Aquarius. Before that, it was in Capricorn, right? So it was operating, to your point, in comfortable signs. Now it's in Pisces. We say it's literally a fish out of water. Pisces is the fish in astrology. So it's going to be interesting, how, especially those people who are going through a Saturn return this year, this generation. Oh man, this is gonna be so interesting. But yeah, just going back to Saturn, he's definitely stern. He is rigid. He can feel like he's limiting you, but I wouldn't say he's as oppressive as Pluto, right? Because you get it.
Pluto doesn't give you a sign. Pluto comes and crushes your house. Like Pluto just crushes your house. Saturn sends you a memo, I feel. Saturn gives you signs. Saturn sends you like the raven and the owl.
Yes.
And the mensajitos, right? And then you're like, I could put it off. And it's like, finally.
Right. Yes. That's the thing though. You will not escape the hands of Saturn, because ultimately what I like to tell clients is he just wants you to operate in your highest form. That's all it is. If you can get to that. And a lot of it is just going back to the discipline, and I'll wrap it up with this. It's just, and you said self-mastery, it's commitment to self, right? Like I came across this quote recently for healers. It's like, you want to help other people heal, but first you got to ask them, what bad habits and behaviors are you willing to let go of? Otherwise, it's a waste of your time, let alone my time. And I think that's what Saturn does.
Oh, I love that so much. And, because Saturn was in Capricorn and then Aquarius, right? Since 2018, it's been in its like home base. It had all the tools to be really restrictive, right? And so we were in the lockdown. We were dealing with, do I get the vax? Do I not get the vax? What's happening? Who do we trust, right? And also, because when it went into Aquarius in 2020, we were all like, oh, connecting throughout space and time. A lot of people were home learning, higher learning, connection, spirituality, higher beliefs. Now Saturn's like coming in to smack you, I feel, or all of us in Pisces, like, all right, you learned some shit. How are you going to put it into practice? Right?
Exactly.
I've said this before in many different times, which it's super easy to be spiritual on an expensive yoga mat, an expensive yoga pillow in your house, right? Behind us. But now that we're out of this lockdown, how are we to embody and give structure in our daily lives to that spirituality that we've been studying, to the healing modalities, right?
Yes.
That's what we're being invited. Like, it's not just Reiki out there. It's not astrology out there. It's here. We're living it, and how we're putting it into practice.
Right. And then how we're showing up in collective efforts, right? Collective efforts. So, okay. So much. Oh, it's just so much to talk about, and it's beautiful and exciting. So let's get into just quick planetary facts. Write this down, please. Put these in your calendars. So the transit itself started March of this year, March of 2023. And this will last until February 13th of 2026. Saturn just went retrograde one final time in Capricorn for us to get a final dose of, right, reforming institutions. And now we're moving back into Piscean energy. This is going to happen for the next 2.5 years, which is why it's lingering in 2026, because there will be one retrograde transit where Saturn will retrograde on August 31st of, I believe it's 2024. So Saturn does retrograde. Yes, he retrogrades. A lot of people don't know that. They think Mercury is the only planet that retrogrades. So just some quick 101s. Yes. And like Vanessa said, Saturn takes about roughly an average of 29 years to come back into your chart for what's known as a personal Saturn return. If we're blessed, we can have up to 3 Saturn returns in our lifetime. So the first one's around late 20s, early 30s, then we get into late mid 50s, and then late 70s as well. So what would you say, just really quickly, to add to like Saturn return for people who are hearing this for the first time, what would you consider or label a Saturn return as? I like to say it's a life's review.
I love that it's a life review. It could be like the Tower and the Tarot, right? It's not for everybody, not all the time. But if you've been going along with what your parents have told you to be, or if you've bought into like society's expectations of you, which how can we not? We're all kind of programmed to at some level, in some way, to some degree, right? I think that when the Saturn return comes in, it's like, oh, wow, I'm in corporate, but I'm not happy. Oh, wow, I got married, but it's not working out. Or, yeah, I do want to get married and have a baby. Or thought that living next to my family was the thing. No, I want to travel the world. It's these stations where you've been building maybe your life according to maybe not your own plan. And I think that Saturn return is the life review that invites you to be more authentically yourself.
Yes.
Maybe you've always been underneath the expectations and the layers of society. And so I think that, I mean, for me, it was intense and it was like life-changing, even though I was already spiritual and doing all the things, but in other ways, right? The realities is, but I think like when you come out of it, your life is different. I mean, it could be you have a beautiful child, you know, it could mean you start a business, it could mean you get married. It's not all like gloom and doom, you lose things, but it's making those choices that more aligned with who you're wanting to be as opposed who you thought you were supposed to be.
Absolutely. Because Saturn essentially is like Libra. It operates off of ethics. It's very similar to Venus. And I believe that, to your point, the Saturn return asks us to question and look within to see, have I been abiding by my own authority? Or have I been living by all these authoritative pressures, societal, cultural, corporate, Western, right? All that bull BS. And so when the Saturn return comes, that's when, you know, like what you said, either things have to end or you initiate new structures for yourself. Because he does represent essentially the patriarchy, right? Oh, the patriarchy.
It's so interesting because it's like it represents a patriarchy, but yet like I like Saturn, but I think it's just I built that relationship over time through life.
Yes.
That, you know, as spiritual healers, astrologers, sometimes there's something skewed where we think, or not us, but people think, oh, spirituality, and do whatever I want. Yeah, which is Pisces, right? Flower child, right? But in order to really succeed on the planet and to actually be who you truly want to be, we incarnated to learn those lessons. And so we need discipline. Like you're going to have strategy, logic, and you're going to have like inspiration and like trust and intuition. And so,
like you said, ground it, ground it, ground it. He is an earth element. Let's get into Pisces now, the basics of Pisces. So what symbolism and archetypes does Pisces represent? You want to kick it off?
Yes. So Pisces is a mutable water sign, right? You have the 2 fishes kind of going the other way. And it's like it's swimming in the like universal consciousness, right? It's openness and compassion, intuition, right? Traits that could soften Saturn, right? But let's focus on Pisces right now. And it is really, it's at the end of the zodiac. So it's said to contain all of the other signs. And it is the sign that, so it's mutable, meaning that it's not fixed and it's not initiatory. I mean, Pisces can initiate things, but their essence is to go with this flow, literally.
Mhm.
And then Pisces is also, when we think of like, I don't want to call positive or negative, right? Because things just are and we learn from them. But in the range of the spectrum, we have oneness, compassion, artistry, intuitive knowing, soulmates, right? And on the other end, we have
Mhm.
escapism, and we have, drugs, and we have
Mhm.
just running away from reality. And so it's, I think, the highest octave of like humanity, and also the opposite, where we don't want to look at anything and we want to kind of envelop ourselves in a fantasy world. And so it
Yeah.
includes all of those. And we have to remember that Pisces has a profound capacity for vulnerability, for
Mhm.
trust. And
Mhm.
so it could always use some discernment.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely, because Pisces can also be naive, right? Because it's so emotionally, right, giving. And at the same time, it can also be a sign of extreme betrayal. I'm calling Saturn and Pisces the reality check transit. Collectively, it's a reality check, also personally in our timelines, reality check. And I think it's literally a representation of changing the Kool-Aid that we're drinking.
Yes. Yes, yes. And even to what I was saying earlier, like we're like, oh yeah, we're all one and everything's gonna be good, and spiritual bypassing. No, Saturn
Yeah.
and Pisces is coming in to be like, no, it's not all
Mm-hmm.
love. The shit is real. We're on Earth, and yes,
Mm-hmm.
we can create abundance. Yes, we can manifest, and we're also dealing with collective energy.
Yes. Pisces is also about like rest, right? That's why you said it's mutable, it flows, it likes to receive, it's very receptive, it's divine feminine energy. And what we're seeing right now collectively with the political uprising, the political injustices, especially what's going on in the Middle East, we've emphasized over the last 2 years with reclaiming, right? Saturn and Aquarius, reclaiming our spirituality, right? Rest for the resistance. That is true. But now, have you noticed with this Saturn Piscean transit, right? We're seeing people who are now over exaggerating or over leaning into, I have to rest, it's I'm emotionally exhaustive. I get that, we respect that, but it's almost like they're using that now as this crutch or this new addiction to bypass. Right? Okay,
That's
tell
why I
me
love
about
you.
that.
And that's why I love you, because rest has its place. But if as spiritual beings we're always supposed to rest, then we probably wouldn't be here. We probably wouldn't. We'd
Exactly.
be Venus or
We wouldn't
Pleiades.
have we wouldn't have ancestors. We would have been wiped out.
Exactly. And it's really, that's the balance that I think we're being invited into, right? You talked about Saturn being justice. Saturn's like, all right, you believe in all this spiritual stuff. What you gonna do about it? How you gonna work with it in the world? And
Mm-hmm.
so I find that that's the difficult task, because being
Mm-hmm.
dreamy, getting our sound healing on, getting our Reiki on, and being really cool and letting go is all beautiful and lovely. How do we do that and also stand up?
Mm-hmm.
That's like, how do we be spiritual beings, right? Having this human experience
Mm-hmm.
and stand up for what we believe in. And also, let me do my Reiki. Now I can do something. Let me do my this.
Yeah.
And that's what, it's not either or. So I think like Saturn is going to be softened in Pisces, right? We talked about
Mm-hmm.
water before we got on here, but also Pisces is going to be invited into discernment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Both are affecting each other. And it's
Absolutely.
needed, it's right. And because Piscean has the energy of Jupiter, the planet of expansion and abundance,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
beneficent, right? A benefic. And then Neptunian, which is like, oh, it's beautiful, it's film, it's creativity, it's also escapism. It has those 2 points that we talked about. And
Right.
how do we tap into our vulnerability to show up?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so Vanessa touched on Neptune and Jupiter. For those of you who aren't aware, Neptune is the current ruling planet of, I say current, it's the modern ruling planet of Pisces. Every zodiac sign has what's known as a ruling planet, a Lord ruler. That planet governs it, kind of dictates it, gives it like an added bonus meaning to it and how to use it in your own personal life and filter through the themes. Jupiter was the traditional ruler of Pisces, but it still brings in both those influences, right? We could still see how Jupiter is still very connected to Piscean energy. And you brought up an interesting thing that I just thought of. Like, I think with Saturn and Pisces, we could also see this new, maybe incoming I don't want to call it a revolution because I don't think it's a revolution, but I think like, remember the golden era of Hollywood, when Hollywood was used a lot for propaganda, for government propaganda.
Oh,
and I think we're going to lean back into that to influence, to sway, to put on these colored glasses of like how to create nostalgia and this bittersweet romanticizing of like trauma and how it can be merged into patriotism. And we'll see Hollywood kind of push the agenda a little bit more with capitalism. What are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree. And, you know, I did a little research, and one of the things that, so it's going along with that, it's about generational plan that we'll see, right? With Neptune conjoining, right? Conjoining Saturn, right? Because you just talked about Hollywood, right? In 1917, we saw first time color films. 1953, we saw Saturn, Neptune conjoining, right? Color TV. 1989, 1990, invention of Game Boy. But where I feel we're going to see is like deep fakes, virtual reality, augmented reality. Like I'm a little scared myself, honestly, about the deep fakes. And I just want to say something too, in terms of the Middle Eastern conflict. Something was said about somebody that was found, and it was said in the light that it looked really bad. And then I went into Spanish media. They had interviewed the person's relative who said that is not the case. Right. So now
are you talking about Bisan?
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Right. So I went in and like I saw English and I saw American, and then I went into Spanish media and I was like, oh, they're saying no, that's not what's being put out. That's not the information. So we're going to find that I think for coming into the next 2.5 years, we have to get our news from a couple different sources. And that's what we have to be careful, because we know every social media platform listens to us, right? And like uses us as an algorithm and then gives us stuff that we are already inclined to peruse, to read. And so we have to be like, oh, okay, I'm getting all of the same news, it must be true. No, let's go and look at Spanish media. Let's go look at media from another perspective. And that's where the discernment piece is coming in.
Yes. Do your due diligence. And that's what Saturn says, right? Do your due diligence.
Absolutely. And that's just a tip of the iceberg of what we're coming to look at, you know?
Oh, yes. Especially because next year, January, Pluto will go back into Aquarius, and I'm doing a whole video on that with a tarot reader to bring in like tarot concepts, which I'm really excited. Yeah. But, you know, that happening simultaneously with Saturn and Pisces, we are in for some interesting times. We saw with the writer strikes, the actor strike, one of the main things they were fighting against is the likeness of their AI being forever owned by these conglomerates in media. Like, how wild is that? What makes you think that's okay? Like,
it's like we're one, but you can't have my likeness. Thank you so much. Like spiritually,
it's ridiculous.
But it's like that's where the boundaries have to be placed. To be utilized by the collective in very positive ways, and in positive ways. It's like the boundaries of, you know, our codependence and personal relationships, overgiving. But in terms of the collective, where have we just perused apps and just love to tap into all these cool things, but yet we weren't thinking, oh, this belongs to an artist. Like, look, I went into Canva, the Canva app, and I did the Magic Studio, and I said, give me an owl that has crystals and does this and that. And within seconds, they gave me all these images. And I was shocked. And then I kind of cried a little bit. I really did. And just get me a little bit, like, not laughing, but like, what's going on? And I'm like, this is the end of the world. I was like, no, but I didn't mean it that way. But I was like, and
freaked out.
It's like, but the artists that originally created this, how are they getting paid? Right. And I'm, you know, I don't want to say it, but will we one day come in and see a YouTube channel with both of you and I talking something else, but we never recorded it? These are the things that we have to watch out for.
I'm like, where's my evil eye?
I know. I don't even want to say it. Yes, evil eye. Got protection here. Yeah, no.
Shake it out, shake it out. Rebuke. But yes, to your point, yes. You know, we saw that with the rise in the scammers online and social media. So we're just seeing that translation of, you know, people preying off of, it's almost like also because Saturn can be Saturn can be like this heavy weight of feeling like, again, I need a way out. I don't see a way out. Pisces is illusions, rose-colored glasses, right? Self-deceit, right? Escapism. I need a way out. And we're going to see a lot of people consumed by their hurt, their depression, their pain. And I hope people get the help they need. I'm going to drop resources, phone lines and stuff where you can reach out for help, because it's going to get really intense. And it's almost like people have been predatory. We've seen that, right? People are going to become more predatory of using our weaknesses, our pains and our wounds, and to use that against us, right? But there was one other thing. Oh yeah. So I'm going to link this article too. I know I'm kind of going on a quick tangent, but Meta, you know who Meta is, right? The owner of Instagram and Facebook. They released a couple months ago an article that they now have this new AI campaign. And this is why everyone's going AI, because it's the only way to protect their stocks. And they're releasing an AI campaign, which I forget enlisted how many exact number of celebrities and public figures. I know Kendall Jenner is one of them, where Meta is paid them. These celebrities, artists, stars signed off on their rights, their likeness to Meta, and Meta is creating fake accounts under the likeness of those celebrities. Am I explaining that right?
Yeah, so, like, you are. And I'm just like, it sounds like a Black Mirror episode, right?
That's like selling your soul also. How much did you get paid to be like, I'm cool with that?
Exactly. So these are the things. Well, we're not trying to be doomsayers or anything, para nada.
No, but like, be fucking aware.
be aware. Don't.
That's it.
Just when people write you and they're like, I'm going to give you a reading, or, hey, son, that allows you to take your likeness. And it's like, we have to be really, really careful. You talked about mental health for a moment, right? So I want to go back a second.
Yes, because Pisces is mental health. Yes, go ahead.
I think, though, that mental health has been highlighted. Yes. Finally, last couple of years, especially with the pandemic, right? And so the great thing is that while people may be at risk at suffering more mental health, I think it's like we've always had mental health issues, just that we didn't have enough information to call it what it was, right?
Yes.
So we have Saturn coming in and going, this is this is that. Let us, an awareness and knowledge can give us the ability to be able to handle it. We're all becoming more deeply sensitive, I think, in general. Even the tough people who don't want to admit it, they're sensing energies, because I do believe humanity is supposed to become more sensitive and more aware.
Absolutely.
And so the empaths need to really come into their like morning rituals, their day rituals. What is it that's going to give you the foundation to get through these difficult times?
Yes.
Like really
own it. Yes.
Prácticas, like, it's not just cute for Instagram, right? We want to do our smudging. We want to do our limpias. We want to have our cycling by the moon. If we don't know what real is, then tap into what is real, your own body, your own breath, right? The ground beneath, the earth, the trees, the animals, your community, your connections. And so I do think that more are going to suffer, but I think that there's going to be more information, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And a flip in the script of like people, right, harnessing that power, to your point, like what I look at, and we'll transition to Saturn collective influences next, but if there's anything else you want to add, when I look up empath content on social media, like the first hashtags that accompany it is empath struggles, empaths be like. And I think for a long way we romanticize like, oh, an empath, I feel so deeply, it's so hard, right? And I think now we're gonna see people come out of that, in a positive way, and still own, I feel very deeply, I feel a lot, yes, I need to rest, but now I've learned spiritual stamina, I've learned better management.
Absolutely. Yes. I love that so much. And I even remember personally people meeting me and they're like, you're an empath, you don't seem like one. I'm like, child, I'm just working on it. You know what I'm saying? I'm deeply emotional and deeply connected, but I'm also very aware that I'm in this earth. And if I'm going to hide in my temple of my room, I'm not going to be able to really, at least in my perception, fulfill the purpose of the North Node in Pisces, right? Which we're going to. And so that balance of, yes, we can be artistic, spiritual, we can be healers, and we can also be, we can find ways to be in the world, but not of it, right? That's a famous quote, be in the world, but not of it, right? And so that's what I'm guided by. Like, I am in the world, I ain't of it. I don't want to buy into, I'm not going to sign away for the deep fakes. all of these things. But no, I will not sign no matter how many billions. But
Yeah.
but these are important things. So get your self-care on. And I don't know if you were saying we're going to go into it, but I think there are going to be more rules on drugs and the use of plant
Yeah. And
right?
plant medicine. Plant medicine is going to go through another colonized phase where, yeah. So let's get into Saturn collective influences. So go ahead, kick us off. Globally, nationally, what do you think we're going to start seeing with this transit?
Totally. As we were talking about rules on drugs, right? And use of plant
Mhm.
medicine drugs, there are going to be more regulations and also access to cannabis. There's going to be advancements in psychedelic drugs, psilocybin, we're already seeing it, ketamine, right, for depression.
Right.
So while there be more maybe suffering, there'll also be other ways of being able to handle it.
Outlets.
Yes.
Right. We're going
I
to see that
also
with traditional therapy too. I think it's starting to bleed into that now. They're really pushing for that.
Absolutely. I've been seeing that a lot as well. I also feel that we're going to become more aware of we're killing our fish, like
Mm-hmm.
toxified by heavy metals. Saturn's in the sign of the fish itself. How do we
Yes.
bring the sanctity back to our water, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that is something that Indigenous folks have been talking about all over the world about saving
Mm-hmm.
water, protecting the water. I think governments, people are gonna start to go even deeper in the understanding, like without water, we cannot exist. We're like what, over 70% water ourselves. So
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be honoring that more. I think we're going to be building structures in water, over water, underwater. We're going
Mm-hmm.
to um, do a lot of that. Thinking of the energy of hydroponics, right? How are we going to
Mm-hmm.
feed people? And so exploring hydroponics, having more of a holistic perspective. I think we've already seen that trend. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
feel like there's going to be a capacity to heal trauma, right? It's going to be increased, right? Because there's more sensitivity, though there are rules. I think that this is interesting because I was meditating on it. I think that people are going to become more aware of their feet, right? Because Pisces rules feet, right? Like,
Yes.
no friends who are getting bunion surgery. I mean, who knows? Could
This is
be a
the time to open up a nail salon because those pedicures are gonna spike, baby. Pedicures.
yes, and like massage your own feet. Like we really ignore our
Mhm.
feet and we stand on our feet. We walk on
Yeah.
our feet. We climb on our feet. I think the feet are the one of the most ignored parts of the body, and I think
Mm-hmm.
we're going to start. I think it could be also a little bit of a backlash that many people walked less and moved less during the pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I also
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Go for it. Go for it.
I also feel like so Pisces is connected to Jesus, right?
Right.
Pisces is
Christianity. Right. The
huge.
fish, in case people aren't aware.
I really feel that a lot of Judeo-Christian religions, and I don't mean this in any negative way, but it almost like they're in their death throes, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like they're gonna make more of a like an impactful, like throwing their hat in the ring or like bringing
Oh,
the hand.
yeah.
Either way, either they're gonna be like, let's relax some things so people can see us as their friend, or the opposite. They're gonna be really, the apocalypse is near, we must. And so
Right.
cults are gonna be, because we might feel lost, we might be like, no, I need more rules. Right. So Judeo-Christian religions are gonna throw their hat in the ring. I mean, they've always had in the ring. They created the freaking ring, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that
Mm-hmm.
you have to be very, we talked about discernment earlier. We have to be very, very aware of cults because in a
Mm-hmm.
time where we understand what's going on, we might submit to like Saturnian influence, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the one that's not good for us. I give up my individuality, just tell me what to do. So
Yeah.
be aware of that. I talked about
Right.
drugs earlier. I think that Pfizer and a lot of other major companies are going to have to be accountable in the age of
Mm-hmm.
Saturn Pisces. I think we're
Mm-hmm.
going to look at a lot of oil, gas, toxic air, like what happened in Ohio. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's going to be a lot of that. So those are
Yeah.
some.
Yeah. I agree. A lot of channel messages that came through for me seem to be parallel or complementary to what you shared. I do think we'll have a rise in injectable medicines. Right, we saw that with Ozempic. We're seeing that with all the shots. Bill Gates is spearheading that. I do think that also going back to marine life, absolutely, the climate crisis, people are going to take that more seriously, particularly with our ocean and our marine life, maritime hey, maybe James Cameron is the guy who comes in and creates good. We'll see. He seems to have a very deep connection with the ocean, with water spirits, right? He's director of Titanic. He's done a lot of underwater exploration. Yeah, I definitely agree that emotional intelligence is going to be at an all-time high, and Saturn represents leadership. So we're going to be asking for more leaders and people in positions of power to display and follow through on emotional intelligence, even empathy. So could that be, I brought this up, Saturn is the father, Saturn is men and masculinity, and Pisces, the divine feminine. Could that be that we elect more female officials or femme officials, or just, even if it's non-binary officials, but people, non-binary officials who bring in more of that empathy and those traits of emotional intelligence. So I do think we'll have a lot of new leadership coming in where we see women in power, and radicalism, going back to religion versus spirituality. I've been talking about this since the end of last year. People with religion or religious institutions are going to get really radical with it, like you said, out of fear to fearmonger, or what we saw recently, maybe become a little bit of loosening of the reins, like you were mentioning, because the Pope did, he's been trying, this Pope has been trying to be a little more modern, a little bit open-minded, with the LGBT community. He's even calling for a ceasefire, so hey, who knows? I do think that old religions, and when we say Judeo-Christian, Abrahamic Judeo, religions, they're Christianity, Catholicism, Baptist, Rosicrucian, no, not Rosicrucian. Well, yeah, Rosicrucian can fall into that. Rastafari. So again, do your due diligence. Judeo religions is a lot of them. You'll be surprised, right? You had no idea. They do dictate and govern a lot in terms of the religious space. So I do think, like you said, they're going to be in the boxing ring, and they're going to try and square up and be like, all right, we got to survive. We got to survive. But with Pluto and Aquarius, I think we're going to have people who come in with the narrative of like, we have to abolish, and then Saturn and Pisces is going to say, no, let's reform. So I think it's going to be a combination of those two, abolishing some things from old religion and then reforming some things to keep old religion around. What are your thoughts on that? I have a couple more things, but what are your thoughts on that? Because I feel like you are like vibing with it.
I'm just going along with you. I'm like, yes. And I think that there's been a movement. There's been a movement anyway to reclaim our own Christ consciousness,
Yeah.
like you can have your Christ consciousness and go out and speak to nature. It's not, we've been colonized to believe that it's an opposition, that it's demonic. We've been forced throughout centuries to give up, some folks, some lineages, many lineages, to give up their indigenous practices. And I think that Saturn and Pisces allows us to reclaim things on our own terms, right? So it's not rules that are imposed by big government or companies, but it's also, what are the boundaries that we're creating, right?
Right.
Like, it's an interesting thing, because there are some religious people around me who, are traditionally, and they're like, well, I don't do that because you do tarot, you do astrology, you do this. And I'm like, but I also believe in Christ consciousness. Why is it oppositional? If Christ consciousness manifested and created everything, and all of it is part of it, didn't the intention count more than what has been written? So I think that we're going to just create our own, we're going to find that understanding, that inner mastery of how are we going to live our spirituality, how express our spirituality, our creativity, our artistry. While yes, there's all this magic studio and all these other things that are there for people, are we also going to rise up and be like, no, I still want to create my own art?
Right.
Like when I saw ChatGPT come in real strong, I got really sad. I'm like, are future kids not going to be able to write essays? You know what I mean? It's like, we used to do our math without a calculator, right? And now I'm like taking the phone and I'm like,
I think, yeah, the bigger agenda is, right, language is important. Language has power. I think it's also a way to hit critical thinking, future generations from being able to develop their own critical thinking by just saying what I need, and then boom, it's formulated for you. So I think there are definitely ulterior motives to that.
I totally agree with you. And that's where the discernment comes in. Let's not go in, like, let's not go towards our own, like, demise, all like, oh, it's so cool. Like, they're giving us cotton candy for the mind and the soul. Yeah, you want to use it a little bit to help you with something. Okay.
Sure.
And then allow your brain, because it's in that struggle, who hasn't sat there and written an article and been like, I don't know how to get through this. And then you just get through it. You're like, yes,
Part of the process. Yeah.
you know, somebody mentioned to me the day, oh, I'm just going to use this to write my book. And I was like, there is such a journey in writing a book and writing
Mm-hmm.
a poem where our mind, body, and spirit connect, and like it's made physical through our
Mm-hmm.
vessel. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So folks who are listening, like you want to lean into it a little bit, go ahead, but continue developing your own critical thinking, your own skills, you know, and just want to add, like I learned improv later in life, right? I've been doing it last
Mm-hmm.
7. That's one of the arts we were talking about that can't really be it's an art that can't be kind of like, what is it called, I guess AI'd, or because it's in the moment and it's like done live. And so there's always an ability throughout your life at whatever
Mm-hmm.
age and time to keep learning, to keep expanding, to keep creating new neural pathways. And if
Mm-hmm.
we lean into the tech too heavily, we're going to rob ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so lean into those arts, people,
Right.
because Pisces is all about it. You know,
Yes.
become disciplined in an art.
Right.
Help kind of
Absolutely.
counter what's happening in society.
Absolutely. I always say that Piscean people are the people who bring artistic revolution, and they help archive the revolution through artistic expression. So please step into your creative self. I also, there's a couple things I wanted to share that I feel in terms of collective influence that we can see with these Saturn and Pisces themes is, you brought up tech, is escapism through tech. Escapism through tech. We saw that with metaverse when they launch all those virtual, right, Google Oculus things where you can be in, alternate realms, right? But I think also with the Vegas, Vanessa, are you familiar with the Vegas sphere? You know, that big sphere in Vegas Las Vegas that they just put up? It's that big dome.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like, it was like so ridiculously expensive, but it's like actually really interesting and cool. So the sphere I'm talking about in Vegas
Yeah.
where they can display things. So I think that's a prime example of like tech exploration and tech creativity, because they've done some really innovative, unique things there, especially with having artists go and like take their performance and the artistry of visual arts to the next level. But at the same time, I think it's really interesting because we can veer into like this escapism of like what these alternate things that tech can create. And so it's like, how do we ground ourselves again when we come out of experiences like that can create maybe just psychological things that we may not be aware of quite yet, and how it's influencing us. Like, for example, Taylor Swift with her last tour, I don't know the exact complexities of it, but a lot of people were saying there was articles being published that after her most recent tour, Eras, was so visually, mentally stimulating that a lot of people ended up leaving that concert with psychological trauma, like repeatedly, like obsessively, like nonstop thinking about the concert experience, or always hearing the song and the sounds in their mind, etc. So I think there's going to be new studies on the brain with these
Yes.
text advancements, right? There has to be. And then a couple more things I just want to share. Like I said, misinformation. I said the big theme is how to build better discernment. I think that's the main message we're drilling here throughout the video, is making sure you're using your own discernment, doing your due diligence to navigate misinformation, because we're not trying to be Debbie Downers, but it will be at an all-time high. And then for you personally, this is basically a theme of, for people personally, if they're like, what do I walk away from this? What should I take away? Saturn in Pisces is a transit that's going to help you, quote unquote, clean up your life. Right, where do we need to clean up our lives? And then really interesting, I think that there will be new advancements with war, naval ships, submarines. We just saw the announcement yesterday about the sub that the US government sent over to the Middle East that is like a nuclear sub now, the first of its kind, something crazy like that. Are we going to use it? I don't know. I'm just saying we're going to hear of these things that have been advanced and they're going to come forward. Okay, so I think that's everything for me in terms of Saturn collective influences. You want to run into or transition into North Node in Pisces and people who have a Pisces North Node in their natal charts. Yeah.
So yeah, no, I love it. So the North Node is really like the deep invitation to our soul of becoming what we've already been, but like manifesting it, right? When we talk about the South Node is who we've been and the gifts that we incarnated with. So if you have a Virgo South Node, you already have the analytical skills, the strategy, the logic, you have the attention to detail, you have the discipline in there one way or another. In this
Mm-hmm.
lifetime, North Node, you're invited to let go of all that, right? You're not completely, obviously, but to trust your intuition more, to flow in spirit, to improvise more, to allow yourself to be inspired. And so I think that stepping into your North Node, the invitation with Saturn and Pisces is still discernment. So we already talked about it, is yes, be free, go into your spirit, expand, keep growing spiritually, and be discerning about what's real, what is not real. And also spiritual bypassing. Like, again, I think I've met some North Nodes that, if they're working out their shadows, they can be like, well, evolved. I have done these trainings. This is who I am. I've sat on the mountain. And it's really important to ground ourselves that no one is better, no one is less. Get away from hierarchical structures of spirituality. We are all here together, evolving and growing in our own pace, in our own cycles, in our own ways. And the North Node invitation of diving into your trust of intuition, your releasing of maybe the having to control things and knowing where it's all going, and allowing spirit to guide you. That's I think we're going to be highlighted in that. And I think the challenge is going to be at least for what I've perceived, is I want to be free and be my Pisces node, but now there's these challenges coming up, right? And they could be, right, like even we were talking about people,
life,
right? So these are some of the things that I've thought about as we discuss this. So I would love to hear what you're thinking about.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for sharing and touching on what the North Node is, in case people are first coming across, like, what's a North Node? Everybody has a North Node. You may not have a North Node in Pisces. And I wanted to really tag team with Vanessa on this video because she's a North Node in Pisces and I am, and we're two different generations. So I think it's gonna be interesting to see, not in comparison, but just like, again, how generationally we have different, concepts and experiences rather. And now here comes Pisces, Saturn and Pisces, and we're gonna see basically Vanessa and I, our asses get whooped or we evolve.
I want to say, I'm going to be like transparent here. One of the things that Saturn and Pisces almost like said to me was like telling me that I was done with the way that I was doing things.
Okay.
I've done so many thousands of sessions. And it was like, you are complete as a healer. And I was like, what? But it wasn't like I was done. My business is done. My work is done. My thing is done. It's like you have set up to do something that you've done most of your life. I started reading people at 16. And then I came online like 12 years ago. And it's like, now, who are you when you're not holding space for other people, right? So then I was invited into, and I was already doing this, but it was like this year I've done so much improv as an artist. I've stepped up in so many different ways. It's like the other part of what, and I mean, there's a lot of artistry in what I do anyway, and what we do is there's artistry in the way we present and the graphics and the way we do a program. But it was like, let go of what you know, for me anyway. You know now this business, you know now how to work with people, you know your hypnosis, you know your stuff. Let it go. Jump into the unknown of why are you being called to play more? Why are you being called to like be your inner child? Why are you being called to be formless? I mean, there is a form in improv, many forms, but then within it, everything's being made up. And so I've been invited more into my artist this year, like more than ever, in a different way that's outside my business.
I agree with that. I think that for those of you who have Pisces North Node and Saturn transiting the North Node, you could probably resonate with some themes that Vanessa was saying. I think people are going to move away from what they've currently been doing, whether it's career-wise, profession, or life purpose. And it doesn't mean completely abandoning it. I think it's like evolving in some sort of capacity, but I also think letting go of certain things that Saturn's like, okay, shed it, let it go. Like, you don't need to keep carrying that. You're not the bag lady, right?
Yeah.
And I think that also for those of you with Pisces North Node, what you could potentially look forward to is moving a lot slower, because Saturn's a slow moving planet. So he's going to allow you moments to say, you know what, I really want to write that book. I've been wanting to write it, but I've just been in, whatever mode. Saturn's going to help you say, okay, I'm going to, whatever your intention, your goals are, aka example, that book, we're going to make time and space to make you ground that thought, that intention, whatever that goal is, that desire, to actually create it, right? The Saturn wants you to build. He's all about building with strategy, like Vanessa said, but also building intentional legacy. So I think a lot of people with the North Node actually are going to step into really prominent positions in society and culture in their communities. I think it's going to be a great time. We're going to see them thrive. If they are, again, stepping into that Pisces energy, which is their inner artist, their inner creative self, right? Their emotionally expressive self. And if they don't let emotional irrationality hold them back, block them, or self-sabotage either, right? We're going to learn new ways of emotional depths, I think, that we've grown into, Vanessa, as personal beings, you and I as Pisces North Node, right? Did you want to add something to that?
I was going to say, you know, I was sharing from my generational point of view. Do you feel like that's also happened with you? Like,
oh yeah, I feel that too, especially with my business and my career. I've been feeling it. It's like, okay, there's something new I need to start doing. Like you said, it's the self-mastery. What am I going to let go now? I've definitely felt that, that I've outgrown some things.
Yeah, absolutely. And at first I felt like I was in limbo, because I'm like, I'm doing my life. This is what I do. This is my full time. It's like, no. We're not asking you to let it go. We're saying that it's very solid, and we're saying it's good. And now let's go into places of discomfort. Let's go, or places that are not comfortable, right? And putting my butt out there all the time, making shit up all the time, is the most comfortable. It's a fun place at times, but to start existing there in a lot of, but it's also brought me other aspects of myself. So I definitely agree and invite everybody who has a North Node in Pisces to take those risks, like
yes,
to create in different ways, you know.
right.
By the way, I am definitely getting a film camera, because where I live, there's also a very active like filmmaking community, and there's like competitions and vid jams and
I
cars.
love that.
So I'm like, next year I'm doing it. I've wanted to for so long, and I'm like, why not? Let's do it. So yeah, the reclaiming of our artist, because I think sometimes our artist has had, I mean, maybe I speak for myself, maybe for others. Sometimes our artist has been in service of survival in our world, right? Or let's say business, thriving. But how about artistry for artist's self? Like, what if art for art's sake, self-expression for self-expression's sake? Of course, it could also be the vessel of like speaking on social justice and speaking on what's happening in the world. But how about just playing because you want to play? A lot of us who are so focused on the right thing in the world, we don't do a lot of that.
Right. Well, I think that's a perfect note to end that on. Exploring the discomfort, because that's where the big rewards will be with Saturn. So I think we touched on general predictions and advancements, right? And who it's going to affect the most, which is the mutable signs, like you said. Just to give a quick rundown, who are the mutable signs? It's Virgo, Pisces, Sagittarius, and Gemini placements. So look to those friends, check in with them. If you're a mutable placement, tell your friends to check in with you, right? But like also look to them for inspiration, because you're going to see them have their moment, their time, but also have to experience some pretty significant shifts. If you have personal planets in Pisces, the inner planets particularly, then of course this is going to be major change, major transformation for you as well. So Vanessa, if people want to seek you out for any of your services, where do you want them to head? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so if anyone wants to seek me out, talk to me, explore some options, go to thebizbruja.com. That's my website. My IG handle is also the Biz Bruja, and excited to connect with you.
Right, and your YouTube channel?
Oh, yeah, and that is, it's so interesting, right? That I'm like, what is it? It is also Vanessa Codorniu, right?
Beautiful,
Yes.
beautiful.
Yeah, and, I wanted to say, like, do the hard work to build the magic, right? Do the work to build the magic. Don't just be satisfied with the magic that just comes in at times, that just flows in. Like let's set ourselves up for the success we dream of, for the expansion that we dream of, by just doing the things that we need to do. That's what it's saying to us, right? And then allowing ourselves to take those risks and fly.
And fly. Yes.
Swim the waters.
Or swim, yes. Well, thank you, Vanessa, for joining me. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Yeah, we had so much fun together. So thank you, guys. Please, if you can, go follow her and subscribe and like and same here. And we wish you the best. We are hoping the best for you. And seek us out if you feel called to work with one of us. So thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bye.